Ichiuji Studio Gallery. I'm Melissa Ichiuji, and this is the first of our Art Talk series. I'm going to politely ask that you all silence your phones. I gotta say that. So this is the first in our Art Talk series for our current exhibition, Untamed. We like to have these talks to give you, as the community, collectors, fellow artists, a window into the creative process of the artists that are currently on view. You never know what you're going to learn. You never know if you will be inspired by what they say or if you will feel not so alone. That always helps. If you are a creative person, this is really important to commune with other creatives. So with that, I have 4 amazing artists here today that I'd like to introduce. So I'm going to read a short bio of each. So first we have Joe Dailey. Joe is a painter, potter, lifelong artist whose work is grounded in decades of creative exploration and teaching. His work is right there to his left. With an undergraduate degree from Virginia Wesleyan College and a master's from Virginia Commonwealth University, Joe spent over 30 years teaching art in Virginia, 25 of those in Fairfax County. Since moving to Warrenton, Virginia, he has revitalized his artistic practice, delving into new techniques in both painting and pottery. His passion for wood-fired ceramics led him to build a kiln with former colleagues, where he continues to explore the dynamic, unpredictable nature of anagama firing, which is also raku. Would you say, or it's part of raku? This tradition, totally different. Okay. So guided by curiosity, well, we're going to learn about that. Guided by curiosity and a deep respect for process, Joe creates work that invites reflection and dialogue shaped by movement, structure, and the organic evolution of materials. All right, so then we have Bill Ferster. Bill Ferster began his creative journey studying design in the mid-1970s and launched his career as a film animator. With this rise of personal computers, he quickly embraced technology to streamline complex camera movements, eventually developing and manufacturing motion control systems for fellow animators. Can we silence phones for So he developed systems for other animators. So as digital graphics evolved, Bill empowered artists from drawing and animation to video editing. Midway through his career, he transitioned into academia, serving as a professor of educational technology at UVA, where he continued to bridge creativity and technology until his retirement in 2021. His work reflects a lifelong commitment to pushing the boundaries between art and innovation, and he makes these amazing, I would say mid-century inspired lamps.
These particular ones, yeah.
These particular ones, but he specializes in marquetry. Is that how you would say it? Okay, it's a kind of inlaid wood, very meticulous, and there's some lamps in the window as well. So he is sort of marrying design and fine art. All right, so Rachel Rebecca. Rachel is a mixed media artist whose creative journey has been anything but conventional. Initially focused on theater and music, she discovered her passion for visual art while studying art history at Dickinson College. After a serious injury and a period of spiritual exploration, including time spent with Tibetan monks in France, she returned to art as a form of healing. Since then, Rachel has embraced a deeply expressive practice rooted in mythology, spirituality, personal transformation, and working primarily in acrylics while exploring themes of feminine power and symbolism. Her work is also there. Self-taught and school-trained, her visionary approach blends emotional depth with vibrant color, reflecting her ongoing journey of rediscovery and creative growth. She also has an alter ego named Lentil, which we'll hear about. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Jean Kim, a Korean-born, Washington, D.C. based multidisciplinary artist, is known for her innovative use of found objects, mixed media methods to explore themes of transformation, empowerment, and the reimagining of everyday materials. So these are her works. This house structure the boots and also this behind me. So she's combining lighting here with sculpture. All right, so holding a BFA from West Virginia University and an MFA from American University, she transitioned from traditional painting in the early 2010s to a more experimental practice, using ordinary household items to create powerful visual narratives. After 2020, her work became more figurative and conceptually focused. She continues to center on personal and collective transformation. Her art has been featured in prominent exhibitions at Pazo Fine Art, solo shows in South Korea, Ichion Open Port Museum, and Jim's Bosong Gallery, and the American University Museum at the Cats and Arts Center recently. Okay, and also the Woolly Mammoth Theater you've collaborated with, Studio Gallery, and the Korean Consulate General. So very accomplished artists here, and materials, multi-methods. So we're going to hear some interesting thoughts about their creative process and what gets them going. All right, so with that, I have some questions, but we're going to veer from those invariably, and this is going to be a very casual conversation. I'm just going to start with the basics. So let's start with you, Joe. So, okay, this exhibition is called Untamed. I love your work because there is an untamed quality about your work, and that's something very specific also to the type of firing you do, right? There's an unpredictability about your firing. So could you talk a little bit about your process and how unpredictability in a sort of wild sense might come into play? Or how you work with that unpredictability.
So currently I am working in for spotting sensor, 3 different processes. And the raku would be the most spontaneous, and then the wood fire would be, probably would be the least spontaneous, but very process and time driven. As a matter of fact, I just finished a 30-hour firing last night.
Wow.
I was up to 4 with 3 other people.
You should have called me. I'm just kidding.
I was up to 4 with 3 other people. We started on Thursday, loading the kiln, and the kiln has you can put about 400 or 500 pieces in it. It's way in my backyard, and you start loading the kiln, then you brick the kiln, and you start loading it with wood. It takes about a quart and a half of wood, and you sit and you watch it, and you slowly start the fire to warm. The chambers is good for the heat to build up, and wood fire can be very clean as a finish, but it can also be a little bit crusty. Some people like it, when it's a little crusty, and it's very natural, and you see things, happen. And the group that I work with, we're more into the what the fire is doing to the glaze, or you don't have to glaze it, and what the ash does and how your work responds to the ash which is flowing through the kiln. It's that process is a little different, and then the raku process, which is faster. You still have to bisque your work before you put it in the kiln, and much more spontaneous. It reaches about 1,850 degrees, wherein the wood fire is, I'm getting real technical here, it's like 2,300 degrees.
Oh, okay.
And, but there's a lot of excitement with the raku because of the spontaneity and how quick the whole process is. So you have to really, Melissa knows, you gotta really stay right on it, and be ready to respond to what's going on. So I spend a lot of time trying to make things look spontaneous when, you know, sometimes you just have to respond to what you're given. Because even though you want to control it, you just got to go with it.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Embrace the imperfections and
Yeah.
unknown.
and those are sometimes the best things that happen.
Yeah.
So what do you mean, you roll it around in the
Ash?
ash? I mean, what do you say you respond to it? What did,
Well, responses, you know, you have to let go. You know, you have all, you know, as an individualist, you know, I think artists in general, whether you're a potter or a painter or whatever, we're more individualists. I like to work alone. I mean, I do collaborate, but, you know, it's my ideas, what I'm thinking about is, you know, it's what I want, you know, people to see, you know,
You're talking technically, so in raku, you pull out the piece from the kiln, it's hot, and then you put it in combustible materials.
exactly.
And then you close the thing and it does its magic, you know, and so there's smoke, there's cracking, it's very volatile.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay.
so that's what he means by you have to be
This one's raku, this one's
responsive, because it's hands-on, and if it's a bit dangerous, you're handling really hot stuff.
yeah,
yeah.
but once it's in there, you just let it go till it's done.
No, you kind of check on it, you decide how, you know, dark you want the ash,
Oh, I see.
and you can modulate it by
Yes.
opening and closing,
Oh.
and then you take it out and you submerge it in water and to cool it, and then that's where the cracking happens.
Yeah.
So it's kind of up to the gods at that point.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of unpredictability then too, right?
Yes.
So in terms of your work, what's like the balance between what you plan and intend and what happens that you accept?
That's a good one.
Well, I mean, like Melissa said, there's a lot of planning that you can do to decide, you know, what's gonna happen, but, you know, sometimes it's just left up to the gods.
And sometimes it turns out better.
And you have to just
What's
let
the,
go.
what's the percentage?
Yeah.
Meaning when you decide to do a project, how often does it come out the way you want it to? 50% of the time? 100% of the time? Are you altering all along
Well,
the
with
process?
raku, you also glaze things. So probably the most controls that I have when I'm, you know, doing a piece of raku pottery is with the glazing process. Because you want that to look spontaneous, but the reality is I've done a lot of planning to make that look like that.
Yeah.
And you know, you can wax your surface, and you have to be I have to be in the right frame of mind when I'm doing that, and not be all thinking about what happened yesterday or what happened this morning or how's my mother doing, you know, any of that, you know, it's,
Yeah, you're in it. in the moment.
so, and you know, I have a practice, you know, with that, but then after that, it is really, you know,
And let it go.
I mean, this is, the black is caused by your reduction process. Melissa kind of, you know, talked about that a little bit. Like how much it stays in the can, what you reduce, what kind of reducing materials, combustible materials you have. You know, some people have, you know, different favorites. I like newspaper.
Yeah. So the darkness of is smoke embedded. That's what makes it that color. So it's not a glaze. It's actually kind of rawish, and it
Right.
absorbs the smoke.
Yeah.
Which is
And you have to have a clay body clay body that's open, as opposed to a clay body that's closed that has a lot of
like porcelain.
like porcelain. And if you have a tighter clay body, and generally a whiter clay body, you have a darker finish, but you have much more exposure to, you know, things breaking. So I generally use a creamy clay body that has particles, grog in it, that makes it more open, so that when it goes into reduction, it's absorbing, you know, all of the it's absorbing all the smoke.
So when it's, never mind. So when you glaze them, what's the relationship between the glaze and the smoke that's coming in compared to what you were just describing a second ago? The glaze is still taking the smoke and
When it
capturing it?
cracks, right?
Okay. Well, that's so, all right. So when you look at these and you see the glaze, and it's more prevalent when you have a white glaze, and this is called a white crackle. And what happens is your glaze is on the surface. When it goes into reduction, your glaze is actually, the surface is separating a bit. And because it's separating a bit, the smoke is getting into those areas. You know, it's shrinking a little bit on your clay body.
At the edges.
And so, not just the edges, all through your, you know, it's expanding and contracting kind of thing. And some of these, when you have the white area, you actually, when you take it out of the kiln, if you really want to be, like some people like to have big cracks as opposed to little cracks. I guess this is crazy. But the preference is, you know, so when you want to have lots of little cracks, when you take it out, I have air, canned air that I can spray on. And so you're listening for, you know, how much is cracking. And, you know, or, you know, if you've done it for a while, you can just take that piece and you just sit it in and then you know what's going on. You know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah, all right. So we learned a lot.
you need to let go.
All right, okay, let's move on to Jean. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It was very interesting.
What are we doing here? Show and
Showing
tell?
a piece close up.
Yeah, that's not raku though, but that's okay. You can put it here.
It's still beautiful.
I like the lid over there, so I'll take it back. to the
Okay,
lid.
no biggie, no biggie. Okay, so tell us about so you do things that are somewhat, there's like a restrained quality, but a wildness at the same time. Can you talk a little bit about that, like the boots and how do you negotiate those two?
Yeah,
The restraint and
actually, my undergraduate, I was a painter. You know, I did a lot of paintings and you know, big sizes paintings. And I still do, you know, color and all this painting quality. I love it. But I don't know, as I get older, I wanted to do more 3D, you know, work. So instead of doing this by myself, I decided to go to MFA in AU. And I was the oldest one there.
that's the best.
And one semester I went to Berlin and it was very hard. Because they all, you know, go out at night time and you know, they say, well, oh gee, why don't you get a tattoo, you know. But anyway, but it was a very, very helpful period because I did a lot of studio visiting in Berlin and I just was so inspired with that. So when I came back and I said, you know, I'm gonna try really in variety of different materials. So I did leather and I worked a lot with a downspout because they are very easy to handle. You know, I can do just crush.
It's aluminum or?
And they have two kind of PVC and also metal.
Yeah, and they can be outside. So
Yes,
you've done a lot of
a
outside.
lot.
Yeah.
So, and then I did a lot of spray painting. I think I got my allergy from that. Anyway, so I actually did a lot of downspout work. I don't know, I did maybe 50 of them. But I learned that they're not very sturdy. So one time I sold like a 36 pieces, like a big sculpture to one of the clients in Baltimore, but when they had a hurricane, it just smashed it. So after they said, I think I need something stronger. So I got into steel and aluminum and stainless, but steel was too heavy and it can get rust. And stainless was too expensive, so aluminum is my still very important, and for me, it's another layer of, expression. So, I mean, the aluminum itself has a beautiful finish, but I always add colors. And going through the pandemic, as we all know, all the galleries were closed. So why don't I just do it for outdoors? I switched my practice to outdoor, and the Phillips collection had a Joy the Show, and I got into one of the, I was very lucky. The title was Standing Tall, just going through the hard time. So after that, I think I had a lot of recognition, I think. So from then, I still work about 80% of practices based on aluminum, and also this piece,
The plexiglass.
and also when I was working with a downspout, I used the solar light at nighttime. They can illuminate, but this is more like an indoor, and actually it does have a different options of colors at nighttime. If you don't have a light, it's kind of.
Want me to turn this on?
Yeah, sure, just for now.
Is it LED inside of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Then, they switch. You can switch. You can, program just different colors.
Yeah, so it can cycle through colors.
Right.
Beautiful.
Thank you. But the concept was behind this booth. My mother was actually a musician, and she played piano, and she did a voice. But for me, I came to the States after graduating from high school to go college. But my mother came when she was really old, and my parents are actually from North Korea during Korean War, so they couldn't go back. So when she came to the States, I think even my father and my mother, all their siblings were in North Korea, so they're always wanting to, have some kind of a relationship or writing a letter or, go back. So I think it's more like a journey for them. So, and also she was very elegant, sophisticated lady. So when she fell down, one time, so her spine was really broken. So she was really humped, when she was 80. But she was insisting wearing a high heel. So that kind of reminds me, so it's like my homage to my mother. So actually, I made it in my garage, small ones. But after that, I do drawings, and then I take it to the fabricator for aluminum, because I can do a little bit of, handling metals, but especially this boot, the big one I made in Georgetown is 9 feet tall. So
Yeah, she makes outdoor ones that are very, very big.
and luckily I found all the fabricator and even the powder coating in Manassas, Virginia.
Great.
This American stripping, they have all over the world. They deal with Kusama and
In Manassas?
yes, National Gallery of Art. All the works are there. So, I went through so many different places, but I'm really happy that I got those 2 places. Yes.
Local.
Local.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to hear more. You hold on to that. All right, Rachel.
Yes.
Tell us about the untamed qualities of your work
Okay.
and how that plays in, or how you feel like it plays in.
Oh my gosh. Well, I didn't start painting until my early 30s, and I was actually a dancer. And I had a back pelvic injury. I broke my pelvis, have herniated discs in my back. So I was really put in that kind of raw dancer energy was really caged. And I didn't know how else to really express express myself. So painting and drawing, sitting down, I was like, okay, how can I be a little less mobile, but also express myself in a really big way? So I started to really harness and teach really myself painting, because in school I majored in art and art history with art history emphasis. It was really art history heavy. And then later it was when I took studio classes and taught myself. So just harnessing the untamed flavor of myself and all the selves that I have. I have multiple selves. I love it that people are like, oh, wait, you were the clown at the opening? You don't look like her at all, you know, and so that's how I grew up. I had many different selves, and it was actually kind of hard for me, because it was hard for friends to really understand who I was. They couldn't put me in a category, in a box. Like sometimes I'll show up in a tie and I like cut off all my hair, you know, like that sort of thing, or I'll put on a different wig and I'll be a different, you know, I used to write poetry from my different selves. And so now I'm starting to just own them, instead of being ashamed of them and going to therapy and saying that I have multiple personality disorder, you know, like all of those things. So I then said, you know, I'm gonna start journaling about these different people. And so now they're starting to enter into my painting. And with my painting Lentil, I went to Headlong Performance Institute in Philadelphia, where it's a lot of performance art. And, you know, my sister made me go. I was in a lot of pain, but she was like, this was before I had my son. And she was like, you need to go. I came back here, I was depressed, you know, I was hurting. And she was like, just try, just do your best. And I was like, okay. So I applied, got in, and got studio credit through Bryn Mawr. I was like, and so that I learned from Emmanuelle Delpech. She is an artist. She is a clown. She's a clown. She's an artist. She is French, and so she taught the clowning class. And it was there that I really discovered Lentil, and I was able to have this freedom. And she really coached me on really enlivening her, bringing her into the room, accepting her for who she was, you know. And it first started actually in tears. Lentil cried all the time, and
Sorry, no, she's fussing.
okay, that's okay.
Continue.
Okay, Lentil cried.
No.
Oh, Lentil cried all the time. So really, she was a cried, scared, and clown. And so that was another version of her. Of Lentil has also a different personality. So it's like, so Lentil had this like, she was scared of everybody. She cried, and my clowning teacher loved her so much that I got to be in the final performance, and I was the act in between all of the acts. So I cleaned up all of the stuff that the performers had left, and then I would just talk to the audience, and I would cry and say like, I hope you all are having a good time, you know, and a clown nose and my little getup. And there was one piece where they left lentils all over the stage. And it took me a long time to mop up, and my clown teacher was like, yep, you take your time, you clean up all those lentils, we're gonna see you. And it was really hard, and awesome. And I cleaned up all those lentils, and I was like, my clown's name is Lentil. Because I connected with the audience, I was making them laugh. It was just like it was a breakthrough for me, and owning selves. And so after Headlong, I shoved Lentil under the rug. I was like, I got pregnant, I had a son, I became mom persona. Like if I went to the soccer games or the baseball games, I'm like a mom persona. And I just kind of own that mom persona, you know, you wear the mom t-shirts, you show up as mom. And I was like, okay, this is just another self. But then I went on a shamanic journey, and I wanted to paint a self-portrait. And I wanted to paint it with just different colors, kind of raw, kind of like, you know, not very like, I didn't really care about making it pristine. I just wanted to get in there. And then at the end of it, it said, someone said, who knows, put a clown nose on her. And then I cried. And I was like, oh, Lentil's coming back. So then I just said, okay, who's Lentil now? She's not really that scared clown that she was. She is this like hyper-sexual, raw, like kinky, weird, in your healer, bringing a feather, you know, and dusting you off of all of your traumas. And she's just weird. And so I just, and like, handcuffs. She's gonna handcuff you if you're not untamed enough. You know, like it's just, and you know, and that's the restraint part of her that she loves. She loves investigating the kink world in that sense of like being a sub or being a dom. You know, she's just like, she's so curious about. Rachel's not really. Like, I'm actually like, as Rachel today, I'm like not, but once I get into that persona, and I'm just like this, like, I want to go to like sex clubs and like wear high heels and kiss women and men or anybody. You know, she's pansexual, she's queer, she's just out there. And I was scared of her. I was really scared. I was like, uh-oh, this persona is coming out and I don't know what to do with her. She's wild, too wild. And when I actually, you know, when the list came out for this show, I wasn't on it at first, you know, and I emailed Melissa. I said, Melissa, I need to be part of the show. And I sent her Lentil, and she was like, okay, we're at full capacity, but we're gonna take your piece. And I was like, thank you, oh my God. Because I just resonate with this, and that's what was coming up for me on my shamanic journey, was this untamed raw self that I didn't know what to do with. So it was really cool then to have the opening and have this progression of this outfit that started to come together. And I texted Jessica, I was like, I'm going as Lentil. She has to show up. And she was like, yes. So,
All right.
yeah. Sorry, did I just scare everybody?
Not at all.
There's a shamanic thing.
So the question becomes, should we all be artists just as a way to acknowledge the parts of ourselves that society has kind of, you know, suppressed?
I think so.
Or programming or whatever,
Yes.
just like long-held beliefs. And,
I think so. I
mean,
think
that's a question for all of us.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if anyone else wants to, but
Do you feel like you can express parts of yourselves that you don't in your real life that you can in your work?
I see the work as a process rather than products that reflect anything about me, frankly.
Okay.
It's the process of doing
Can you
it.
hand him the
yeah,
mic?
sure.
It's the process of doing it. Is this on?
Yes?
Yeah,
It
it
is.
You just have to get close.
Okay. It's the process of doing it, not necessarily, you know, because they're different each time. I don't think I do anything twice at this point. I'm just messing around and, you know, say, okay, let me try this and see how this works out. And if it works out great, you know, I'll riff on a thing. But no, I see it as a path for exploration as opposed to a end product that reflects anything about me. I mean, I guess it is me because I made it, but no, I don't think of it that way.
So why the woodworking? How did that come about?
I was just playing around. I like marquetry, and somebody gave me a book by this guy Silas Koff. If anybody's heard of him, Silas Koff. He's like this amazing, totally amazing woodworker. He does marquetry. So marquetry is basically the idea of taking very thin veneers and making a picture out of them. And it's used it's been used actually since you know, 2 or 3 millennia. The Egyptians used it way back then, and Americans used it a while. And and in America it was done primarily as kind of a decorative art on furniture and things like that. And I don't remember who turned me on to Silas, but I just fell in love with his work. It's just amazing. And he does. If you get a chance, you should look him up.
Say his name again?
Silas Koff, K-O-P-H. He lives up in Western Mass. And I finally got to meet him, which is like, wow. He's 80-something years old, I think, anyway, it was great to meet him. Anyway, so I started doing it, and somebody was talking about color before. I think you were talking about color as an issue. Wood is brown. There's no getting around it. You know, it's brown, and there are a couple. Like I can do a couple different shades here, and I found a good red, and I found a good black, and things like that. But basically, it's brown, and you have much of a constrained palette. So basically, you've got the basic, it's lightness and darkness, you've got the various grains and things like that, and the color, and they do make dyed veneer, but I don't like using it. Anyway, so getting back to your question, so I first started doing these flat things, and the problem is I do them, and then they'd sit in my back room, and so and what I found is I needed more degrees of freedom, if I can use that expression, to do it. So I wanted to do more dimensional things. So rather than just using I still like veneer because you can use all kinds of. I mean, like for this one, that's Paduk, that's Wenge. I think that's from Africa. I can't remember what that one is. But anyway, they're like 5 or 6 different veneers, and you get these things. There's a place in New York that sells all different veneers, and they're unfortunately expensive, but they're not as expensive as buying whole slabs of wood. You know, and it's fun to be able to play with the different things of wood and play the grains. So you don't have that much control. You've got control. You've got the tone of the wood, and you've got the grain direction. But what I like about doing the lamps is they're dimensional. Is that it offered a whole other thing, and these were all. When I went to school, people were into Bauhaus was a real big influence in the way that they taught us at school, and I always liked that. You know, the 30s and the Russians from the teens. I thought, you know, it's amazing work. And so I really enjoyed that. And so I started duplicating that style and that thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And here we are.
And here we are.
And they're getting better and better every time you make them.
I'm working on it. It takes time.
Yeah.
That's like, I think you were talking about something that you don't know how it's going to turn. Well, mine were terrible in the beginning because as smart as you think you are, you just got to do it. It just takes time. You just got to practice and practice and practice, and there's no getting around that. You just got to do lots of stuff, and thankfully they do get better over time. But
Yeah. So on that note, like, how do you stay inspired? Let me ask Joe. You know, this idea of like, you know, the labor of it. It is labor. Like, it's not all fun. Like, some of it is just really hard labor. And how do you stay inspired when, you know, either you're out of ideas, or you get frustrated, or do you ever, or are you always sort of flowing with the next thing?
I'm never out of ideas. You know, I'm retired. I retired in 2015, and I taught for 30 years. And you know, as you're working and you know you're helping kids, you have all these ideas, and you have things that you want to do. You want to do them differently. You want to know how they work, and there's really not enough time.
Yeah, your work walks the line between utilitarian and sculpture.
Right.
Is that intentional, or has it just kind of happened? Like, I noticed this vessel here, it's kind of in 3 parts, but it's not necessarily meant to be utilitarian, I don't think. It seems sculptural primarily.
Basically, I'm a texture freak. I love texture. I love things that are three-dimensional. I do draw sometimes, but I find drawing to be quite torturous. Just,
Not in a good way.
it is just, and if you would see my drawings, you would look at them and go, is that the same person? There's a lot of control that comes into drawing, where, for me anyway, and where, you have this clay, something that you can pick up, something that you can mold, something that you can wedge, something you can put on the
It's
wheel,
very sensual,
something that you
too.
can, something
Very sensual.
that you can, it's very personal. Just change the topic. I don't even know where I am now. Let's keep going. Where was I going?
We were just talking about inspiration, like where do we find inspiration? What do we do, like for other fellow artists? Like, it's good to know, like, how do you get inspired?
Okay, so I have some friends, I still have, teacher art friends, and, so as soon as I retired, they said, well, let's get your work out there, we're gonna help you, get out there and everything, and I was like, I have these ideas, but I have new ideas, and I wanted to start fresh. I wanted to, this is the new Joe, this is coming out here, because here are lots of things that I've been thinking about doing that I haven't done, and I want to do them and just create a whole new portfolio of things that will probably, if you would come to my home studio, you would see I definitely have a progression of ideas that, that flow from, from one year to the next year, and you can see how I've expanded on them, and
Yeah.
and I have this.
Variations.
If my daughter was here, she would go, Dad, don't say that. But I have this, because Rachel's the way she is. So I have this. I like to contrast hard things with soft things, or round things with angular things, and I like for the viewer to. I like to attract the viewer, so to bring them in and to be able to look at what I'm making, and then maybe walk away and come back because they were intrigued and they wanted to know what was around the corner, or what was underneath something, or how did this happen, and I want them to be able to continually find something that they're interested in, and not not look at it and go, oh, okay. Like, I'd be so disappointed if somebody looked at something and they went, it's fine.
I'm gonna like go off the rails here, because you said something that kind of got me intrigued. You said you like to mix sort of organic shapes with angular shapes. I've been listening to a podcast about the difference between French women and American women. And that the American culture has just sucked the sensuality out of life. Could you talk to me a little bit about how you perceive the balance between feminine and masculine? And I'm looking at you and your work and what you just talked about, and I'm looking at Jean's work, and there's something masculine about the materials, and it just got me thinking, could you talk a little bit about how you envision your work balancing the masculine and feminine within you as an artist? And do you even think about that?
Well, I don't. Well,
We can move on.
It's a tough one. Well, here's what I'm going to say. I think that everyone female, have feminine and masculine, qualities about them. I mean, I know women who are very domineering. You could say masculine, emasculating. I think that, well, I know for myself that, you have different, at different times during your relationship or with yourself, it's very personal. You have to demand things of yourself that are not easy. And sometimes you just can't be, for me, sometimes I know that I have to soften myself and not be so male, domineering, even though you need to ask for what you want. But sometimes you can get what you want without being so demanding.
By yielding. Tell me
There's a
what,
quality to it.
Tell me what you think about that.
I thought you were going to go on. Well, I think, my Korean name is really like a man's name, like Robert. So whenever, if I put my Korean name, this is, for example, I took my sculpture to New Jersey, like an outdoor park, and this lady is a Korean, right? And she was like, wow, I thought you're a man,
Because of the name.
Name, yes. So I thought it was very interesting. So they just think, with my work, the metal and size, and so they just presume like 100%. I don't know why, but I thought.
Well, let me ask you, did you grow up thinking that your name was somewhat male?
Yes.
So that's so interesting. Do you think that you've kind of
I think
infiltrated your work a little bit?
I don't think it really any relationship, but for me, like I said, even when I did my painting, I don't know, somehow I really like physicality, the big paintings. So I don't know, maybe something. But like you said, I think we all have a both sides, they're saying like a joke, like when you married, the husband said, oh, I'm marrying like a small, like a pigeon, and then you became like a wilder and wilder, you're like a tiger, and now when you turn like 70, you became like a dragon. So, they were just saying, but like I said, I'm not really conscious, but I react, in different situations, you say. But it's not like I think I feel the same way sometimes. I'm very, like a mother, loving mother, but the other day, sometimes I'm really angry, so I wanted to throw away everything. So I think we all have different personalities, at least, which is, I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, when I practice sculpture, I'm in totally different mode. I think because I consider, this is how it's going to be made. I cannot make, all this like a painting, like a line.
You have to engineer.
Yes, so I think, I put my mode in that sense. And when I do painting, I can use and I can change. This one, if you mess up, you cannot change. So painting, you can always go back. So I'm more relaxed when I do painting. Yes.
Yeah.
And drawing, I didn't like it because when I was growing up, we had to like measure everything, portrait. And I hated it. So, but I couldn't make a really good drawing. So sometimes I don't measure. I start with like a nose, and my teacher didn't really like it. But I really like painting, but I don't really care for drawing. And so just one example, 2 years ago I had to do big solo shows, and I made a theme as Over the Rainbow, because when I came to States, I watched the movie first time. I really liked it because Dorothy was thrown out of the tornado and then she ended up in like a no land. I felt like I was. But she was going through and then looking back. I mean, she wanted to go back to house, but home.
Yeah.
But finally, what happened? She had a shoot and she had to just click, and then she came back. So
Now you're doing
that was my title, was like a magic words. So I mean, it's always your answer is there. I feel like it, so you just have to look for it
Yeah.
and just go on your journey. Yeah.
Fascinating. All right. So let me ask you.
Yes.
You acknowledge that you're kind of able to express these shifting, fluid parts of yourself.
Yes.
Would you say that they're also portraits, would you say?
Yes.
Somewhat? Or
Yes.
this one and this one
Uh-huh.
in some way?
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
I would say that actually this is probably a self-portrait of me as what I saw myself when I was younger. I actually saw myself more as a boy when I was younger. When I started to, get to the point where I was growing boobs, I actually went to my mom and I said, "What are these?" I was really confused. And she said, "Oh, honey, you're just, growing into your, your breasts and, growing as a woman." And I actually took scissors from the drawer and tried to cut them off. So, so we fast forward, I think my trans self, or however you want to put it, got repressed by society. And, fear. There's so much fear around being trans. There's so much fear. I think society has really tries to dictate the binary, the gender binary, and doesn't leave room for other expression. And I look at some of the teenagers now and I'm like, God, I'm a little jelly, they're really getting it with just being who they are. I think as a whole, we're kind of going back to a kind of darker repression because it's a lot of freedom, right? I think it's like so much freedom that scares people, and they're just like scared to really then look inward at themselves, to be able to see that within themselves because there's so much fear. And so for me now, it's like, wow, I'm a mom, it's like balancing that. And there was one point when I wanted to get top surgery and I just decided not to because of like doctors, and I was so done seeing doctors with my back and everything. So it's now coming out in my painting, which I love, and that's a way to express in my clown. And so my clown has trans colors, the blue and the pink, and so, and just like wild, garish colors, and then my kind of how I saw myself when I was younger. And yeah, so it's really exciting, and a lot of people look at me and say, "Rachel, you look so feminine," and I think I was just really trained to be like, then very feminine as Rachel, and so when you see Lentil, she's a little more masculine. She kind of controls the room. She's like here, she, even though has like 6-inch high heels on, she's gonna be more domineering. And so, it's just really, I think, fun for me to explore it in painting, explore it in performance, and, yeah.
All right. I can see that totally in your work. So, Bill, how is your work related to your eroticism? I see a lot of orbs being penetrated by wood.
I guess you could look at it that way. I've never really looked at it as an erotic act, particularly.
Now you
Oh,
do.
yeah.
No, I don't want to make you uncomfortable.
No, that's okay. I don't think the gender thing really plays in so much into my work particularly, because it's more, designed as opposed to, but I'm not sure it's necessarily masculine. I mean, these look like boobs, kind of.
Well, it's the source. I see it as
Right.
the source of life,
Right.
light and illumination.
I mean, it's an interesting perspective, but no, I hadn't really thought of it that way.
Do you see your work, your artwork? I would like to ask all of you, and then we'll get to questions. As a spiritual practice, does that ever come into play?
Not for me, because I'm not a particularly spiritual person. But I see it as a creative exercise to explore and see what happens, that it unfolds itself, as opposed to I mean, obviously to do this it's got to be pretty well planned in advance. Once I actually have the drawing, it's all over. I basically just do it. But in the drawings, I sit on my front porch and mess around and think about things. And you asked earlier about with Joe about where he gets his inspiration for things. The inspiration is basically by looking at a bunch of things that people are doing. So I pay a whole lot of attention to what other people do. I don't want to copy them necessarily, but they're just ideas. And
Within that art form, within those materials.
Anything, but anything. And frankly, I really love Pinterest. I'll sit down and maybe for an hour and just look at things in Pinterest and just see what they toss up. And I'll go down and I don't know how the algorithm works, but basically you click on something and then all of a sudden it knows, hey, you kind of like those kind of shapes. Maybe I'm putting too much into it. It's kind of like Spotify, when Spotify says, oh, you're going to like that one. I don't know whether it's really true. But anyway, just looking at, I think the idea is you just get a lot of input of stuff and you say, gee, that gives me an idea. And sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with what I just saw, and sometimes it's exactly what I saw. But in general, you have to have input. You got to go to galleries and stuff like that.
Just keep feeding the.
Yeah, just lots of stuff, and we're blessed because we're on the web. Everything can come to you. Whereas before, I mean, I lived in Washington before, which was a pretty target-rich environment for art. But out here, as you well know, there's not a lot of stimulation other than natural stimulation, and with the web you can see all kinds of stuff and see what people are doing, and people are amazing.
Yeah, you can go down many rabbit holes. I don't know. What do we want to do? Take questions or talk about spirituality or what? Do you see your work? I mean, you do. There's a big element of your work that is totally reliant on just the natural process that is not in control. Fire, elements.
Well, I think my work is very personal, and I was trying to leave my teacher self at home, but I think anytime you're creating something that you are pulling on stuff from within. I mean, I just don't know how you can't do it. You have to be. It's very personal. I mean, I think that's why artists are individualists. And when you constantly are walking through the world, and you're bombarded with images. It's this constant, things that you're seeing. Maybe you're not, at this time, bringing those images up, but you are, I am reflecting on those things. I remember when I was going through my divorce, my work distinctly changed. And, people would look at it and they would go, what's going on with this? And I went through a series of things that were all in boxes. So I had a lot of boxes, and I had things coming out of boxes, things that couldn't come out of boxes. It was, and I know when was taking classes and we would do those critiques and everything, and people go, what's going on? I'm going through a divorce. That's and it was reflective in my work. I still had hard and a contrast of hard and soft and angled and organic, but there was this whole thread of I don't want to say trap, but that's because it was I think if you take, for me, if I take time to look back at something that I did and look at the time and look at the circumstances, you can literally just say this was this, and this. It's like a timeline.
Right. So when I'm talking about spirituality, I'm not necessarily talking about religion. However, when you walked in, you said you just came from the church. So does spirituality, if you don't mind talking about this?
Sure. For me, my parents are very devoted Christian, and I practice, and also, so I think for me, when I don't know other people, but when I even paint, I don't know, sometimes you can put some different colors and sometimes it's turning into kind of a little bit dark. And I don't know, I always choose to in positive and very bright vibe. So at least for me, I make a choice. When I make a final product, I like to be more, not necessarily, like a ha-ha, la-la.
But uplifting.
Yeah, very uplifting, positive, and also some critic told me, this guy was telling me, I can see you're like a balance, like said, like a, even Eastern painting, because we also did a lot of, when you do like calligraph, you think you just write it, but you have to just this line. I think I did, I don't know how many, like 1,000, more than 1,000 times, just this, and then this, and then you can make flowers and all that. So plus all these years before I came to the States, line drawings, and then came to States. I went to Morgantown. Well, actually I went to Houston Baptist University for a year, but then I met my husband, so we married early. So, but I did my training here. So they said I have a balance in Eastern and Western. So I don't know if you see. So I think I use a lot of line. That's why even my painting, a lot of
The
vertical.
aesthetics.
Yes.
So I hope you don't feel offended that I would bring up spirituality. When I think of spirituality, I think of more like in Greek culture, the genius is not the person, it's the energy, right, that comes into the person. So if somebody said you have a genius, you are a genius, you actually have a genius that you can call on. So that's the way I look at sort of spirituality.
Like a muse.
Yeah, like a muse, in a way. All right, well, how about we open it up to questions? Does anyone have questions for our artists? Joe?
I was talking to my son last year, and I'm a photographer. I was just working the room taking pictures. He's like, man, you're just chasing the energy.
Oh.
So I feel like as artists, in your work, that's what you do. I mean, that's one of the connecting threads that we seem to do. So it's just, my question is like, have you thought about that, or, do you end up with your best pieces when you're immersed in the energy, or, that's spirituality to me.
It's just being open.
Yeah, for
right.
sure. Yeah,
Like flow.
yeah. So like, you were talking about your work, I'm not very spiritual, but almost every word that came out of your mouth seemed spiritual to me.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah.
Well, I don't think of it that way, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it takes a lot of courage to be an artist too, you know, because you're going to confront things, the good, the bad. So, you know, I'm just kind of interested in the artistic process where you're like, man, this is great. And then you wake up and you're like, this is crap. You know, that whole, you know, self-crippling doubt and then elation of like, yeah, I nailed this one. So, I don't know. For me, that's an exciting thing about, you know, chasing the energy or creating art. So I just wonder how you guys feel about that.
This is spiritual.
Well, I am going to say that if I'm not making pots or if I'm not painting, I get a little cranky. So, and my family knows that. And, you know, they'll go like, you need to go make something. Because obviously you have some things that you've been thinking about and you need to do something. You need to produce them. You need to, you know, have something happening. You need to use your ideas. And I, honestly, I just get kind of cranky. And people don't like to be around. So it's you know,
Yeah.
it's.
I think I was reminded of the writer Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yeah, she was talking about genius.
Yeah, and what does she say? She says like ideas are kind of in this like other realm, and then you just like channel it. And I love that because we don't get so, I guess, attached. Like when you were saying, "Oh, that's bad," I'm like, "Is it? Who knows? Like, what's bad?" So it's like this, like, you're in that flow, right? Of like the ideas come in and then they come out through your filter of, you know, your person for that day, and and then you just make, and I think that is really cool because what is it called when like there's an idea that's happening in the United States and then the same idea was going on in Rome or something, you know, back in the day when we didn't have technology and cell phones and all of that. And they were coming up with the same creation. I can't think of an example right now.
Telephone, but I think Bell and whoever else, somebody in Europe came up with the same, another guy, they filed the same day at the patent office and Bell got in there first.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like what is an idea? And so it's when you say my idea, I said, is it yours? And so I don't know, I love that. That's to ponder on that.
Any other questions? Comments?
What was the longest piece, what was the longest amount of time it ever took you to do one of your pieces? That's to all of you guys.
A year.
A year, okay.
But that's not like
From
2 months, maybe,
Oh, wow, okay.
not a year.
I think I have one project that actually I've been thinking about it for a long time, so I did a small sketch, but then, you know, I just go back and, you know, so actually, I don't know, you consider that, but
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it for like 2 years, and finally, I did a cat drawing, then took it to the fabricator, and actually it's been completed and it's ready to go to the show. So it just takes years, and it's funny, you know, sometimes, you know, like, I don't know, I think an artist always, you know, whenever you see something you wanted to relate or just naturally. So, I mean, sometimes, you know, I mean, in Korea, watermelon is so small in Korea, but then I came here, it's like a big watermelon. So, I mean, it is great. So, I mean, this is funny, but I love to carve the watermelon. Just to see the 3D, it's really easy. I use a lot of watermelon. And then, you know, styrofoam or wood, but watermelon is just so great, you know, I can just, you know, I guess
Yeah.
I'm always aware of, you know, I have, you know, have ideas with, like you have to say, is it gonna be, you know, feasible in 3D or it has to come down from ceiling? Just, you know, always thinking.
Yeah, they're kind of always
Right.
innovating that.
I don't know when something starts and when something stops. And like, I guess if you like the first like brush stroke of a painting, you know, and then that's in a gallery or just it's there in your room, I guess like for me it's a month, which I need more patience probably. Yeah, but I love the idea of like when does something kind of, because I think like it's always changing and then the artwork is change. It's not, you know, when there's a viewer then looking at it, then it also changes as well. So.
Question? No? No more questions? Okay, well, anything else anybody wants to add? Any words of wisdom for our would-be artists? Like, just
I
do
just
it.
think making things is a very good way for me to relax. Is a very good way for me to express things, and I think everybody has an artist in them, and and tapping into that and creating something, it brings me joy. It brings me joy to make something, and even more joy to, that somebody actually wants it, because it's very personal. And it's, like I just said, I get cranky when I don't make things. So it's very freeing to, find a way to express an idea, and in the end, and actually like it. Clay is very time sensitive, so you can't. You can, but it's a month working on something is about what you can structure it to. However, a painting is never done. It's never done. And if I don't sell a painting and it's still in my house, I'll paint over it. I'll just come back and I go, I really wish I had done X, Y, and Z to this. People come up to my house and go, was this, I go, yeah, it was. I changed it.
How,
Gallery goes?
how much does everybody spend their day or week, or how disciplined are you in actually creating?
Depends on if there's a deadline,
Yes.
right, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'm like him. If I'm not making something, I'm sitting around feeling really bad. So I like to keep constantly making things. So it depends. I've got other gigs going on, but in general, I try and spend at least half my time. So what's that? 8 hours, 5 hours a day doing it, and I get way late with other things. But I'd like to spend more time actually doing it. But
For me, it depends.
it gets old though.
It's seasonal for me because right now the grass is growing. I like to garden. My dad was a gardener, so I really enjoy that. So if I make a commitment to my yard for 3 hours, I have to make a commitment to my work for at least 4 hours. I can't have all the joy out. I gotta balance it. So.
Do you work every day?
No, I
Yeah.
wish I can, but like I said, I have a very busy life, and also family, and somehow I'm living with son's family and my daughter's families. I have 3 grandchildren and my husband, so like I said, whenever, if I have like a deadline, sometimes I don't sleep at all. I just, it's kind of excuse, but sometimes I have priorities. So, but as long as I can accomplish, I kind of make a maybe within a month, I said, if I can spend this much of time, I'm satisfied. But I cannot do like every day, like guys, like 3 hours, 4 hours. So I was very, very happy when I did my MFA. It was like I leave in the morning, say goodbye, and come back. So yeah, but I think everything for me, everything has to be balanced. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think balancing life and studio work has been calling to me, and so being mom and being in my studio. So I always try to spend at least a couple hours a day if I can to carve out, but it varies throughout the week.
Yeah, sometimes if I don't really make it, but I just use my laptop and I go to and then different artist studios, So I guess it's like if you don't do like a diet, you feel like, oh, I missed something, like that kind of feeling. So I do something, but not necessarily with my hands.
Yeah. I think thinking about things, looking at things, reading things, that's also a part of it. Joe.
I don't know how much time we have, but this is a really good Melissa question. It's like, do you remember like your first creative act?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think, like I said, I live with my granddaughter. She's 6, but she really reminds me of. She loves painting and drawing, whatever. So even for me, I think I was really provided with my parents, the crayons, So I did that. So if you ask me, young age, I guess kindergarten or first grade, I remember what I drew actually.
Yeah.
I did like trees and I guess me, and I didn't like it there because I looked so big, That kind of creativity, you can say, like first work of mine.
Friends.
Do you have any recollections?
Well, if my brother and sister were here, they would have a lot to say about that. I'm the youngest in the family, and so I guess I was just very fortunate. My mom and dad always encouraged me to, I was always drawing. I was always making stuff. It was, my mother was a seamstress, so she was always sewing. My sister hated sewing, so I was one who got to pull out all the pins and all the tailor tacks and everything, and it was constant. I didn't even understand when when it came time to have art in the class and people didn't know what to do. I was like, I already know what to do.
All right, gather around.
It was like I had that, I had that constant exposure. Like, and when I went off to college, it was, my parents didn't go, well, you need to be sure you're a doctor, or you need to take this class or that class. I said, of course, I wanted to major in art, and they said, go right ahead.
Nice. Were you encouraged?
Not to do art particularly, but to do stuff. My parents always had. I used to work in my dad's lab, and it used to be fun to do stuff there, but not necessarily for art. Although I had a grandfather who was a sculptor, so we all venerated him, and he was good. But no, not particularly.
Yeah.
I think my first thought was playing with the hermit crabs in preschool, and it was in the sand. And so I would play with the hermit crabs, and I would make little designs in the sand. And so that was really, I think. But then I took piano lessons at a young age, and my family was very theater oriented, so we did shows. And so I think that was like first. But I love that what came to mind was the hermit crab moment instead of just being on stage. So.
I just remembered that, Mark Bradford, his mom was a hairdresser, so he does use the paper, the perm, so he used to play with it, just, drawings, and so now he's a world famous, he was representing at Venice, Manila, you know, so.
Have you guys gone and seen Pickett's Charge yet?
Oh, yes,
Oh my
many
God,
times.
it's so amazing.
And I saw even his work at the Venice when I went there. So I mean, he was just saying, you know, just play around in his, you know, huge shops and just with the paper. Yeah, so, you know,
Yeah,
I think.
it all goes back to childhood.
Yes.
All right, all right.
Thank
All right. Guys, that was great. Really good. We learned a lot.
The diversity of the people in the conversation is just fascinating.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I read a lot of shows, but this is the first time that, Melissa, thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, thank you, thank you. It's an honor to have all of your work here. It really is. It's special, you know, really
It's
special.
good company.
Yeah, I think this is a really nice idea, getting the artists together to express, you know, what's going on in their lives and how is their routine, and did you have a family, a relationship that
Yeah, where did this all
brought on the
come from?
art inclinations? It's great, anyway. Very nice listening to you all.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
So,
June.
got it,
I'm in June.
got it.
I'll be here every time though.
Good.
I'll be here every time.
Good, good, good.
I go hear artists talk about the art.
I know.